Fantastic. Well, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are all over the world, Shiatsu brothers and sisters. I've missed all of you, all your lovely faces, and it's our first episode of 2022, the year of the tiger. And to honor that year, we have a great guest here, all the way from the UK, Nick Haines. Welcome, Nicholas.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. Been super excited about this, and friendly faces here on Zoom. So I feel very at home already.
Fantastic. And those that are on our Facebook group, if you can comment, like, heart, whatever you can do to let everybody know that we're going live there. And if you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate. We'll leave some time for that too at the end. If some of you haven't done the vitality test, it's on Nick Haines' website. It's on our Facebook group. The link is there. So please go ahead and do it. It's an amazing test. I did it, and there was some surprises, but some things that were obvious too. And it's a great test to do for all of you. Really, it gives a lot of insight. So Nicholas, maybe we'll start, as many of the guests haven't known about you or met you before. If you can tell us a little bit about your journey into this therapy world and the Institute of Five Elements.
Yeah. I think, we have kind of, in life, we have a few kind of significant moments that kind of change our flow and change who we are. So I think I've kind of got three really. So the first one, when I was 5, my mother was really, really poorly, and I was fostered around different families. Like every month, for a year, I moved to a different family. So kind of what happens when you do like that, or what happened to me as my experience, is that I became very hyper vigilant. I just started watching everything, observing everything, and seeing everything, because I just wanted to try and work out what had gone on. And then by the time I was a teenager, I was really anxious and really panicky, and I couldn't concentrate. I was in a real mess, and they were trying to medicate me and do all sorts of things. And the one thing that I found could just settle my spirit back down again as this angst-ridden teenager was acupuncture. I had shiatsu acupuncture. So and that was a really kind of big significant change for me. So then as still a dysfunctional teenager and young man, I ended up in America working at an acupuncture college. And I actually went to America to go surfing and do stuff like that. But I had to get a job, and the job I got was at an acupuncture college. And I remember sitting in that very first class, and they started describing the 5 elements. And it was like I saw the matrix, and my anxiety that I'd suffered with from 5, and I was 20 when I went to America, it just literally went. My anxiety just disappeared, because I had like a matrix map. And that was my kind of second significant moment in my life. I had like a matrix map of the world, and I could see how politics was operating, how history was operating, how economics was operating, how education, how people's personality, how family. It was like literally I just saw how everything was. And I remember sitting in the class going, oh God, and I literally could see it all, but most people didn't kind of know, because most of it was being taught around health. I literally could see a matrix, and it was very, very weird, and it kind of rewired my brain. My anxiety disappeared, and I just calmed. And then I thought, I want to know more about this. So I went to China, and I studied acupuncture, and I went to China, worked in a big hospital, and worked there. And I remember asking, oh, tell me about the elements and politics and economics and history and thing. And it was like a nothing. But I knew from the books that I'd written that they were originally, the 5 elements were used to understand politics, economics, behavior, society, culture, they were used to understand everything. So I knew it was there. So I kind of spent my whole life exploring how we can use this understanding to understand complexity, to understand change, to understand what happens within societies and families and individuals and within us as the process within us. And I had a big acupuncture practice at a health center, started a big acupuncture college, which is still running, and I'm still on the board. And I was really 100% happy in my practice. I loved every single minute. I just adored it. And then, you have these little niggly little voices that you need to do something different. And I had absolutely no intention of doing anything differently at all. I loved it. And then what happened, so the third event happened in my life was I was in France and I fell off a roof and I lost my spleen, I broke all my ribs and and I had about a year where I could barely function, was deeply shocked. And that, I think that was, I had ignored the whispers and I ignored the shouts and I'd ignored the things. Eventually I got a big shove. And then I kind of tried to continue with my practice, but was struggling more and more. And so I started to set up the 5 Institute at the same time. Because one of the things I really wanted to try and do was explore the bigger things that go on. But it was really difficult because I loved working with people individually. And I did over 50,000 one-on-one consultations. As Kindy knows, I had a kind of big waiting list. I was busy. I was very, very happy. And then forced in a way to do something different. And so I've got the 5 Institute and we look at bigger. So the 5 Institute is about internal and external cultures. How do we live with ourselves and how do we live together? And I spoke at the United Nations and we work with governments, we work with, basically, I'm a tart. I will speak with anybody around anything, do anything to try and see how do we live with ourselves and how do we live together. And then eventually I kind of thought I have to give up my practice, and I gave up my practice. I gave my practice away. I literally just said, someone, you have it. I pretty well gave the health center away. I did everything in order to make sure I didn't go back, because I knew if I kept, and I cancelled all my professional membership, I cancelled absolutely everything to stop me going back, because I knew I would.
Well, that's a wise man. Yeah, it's easy to go back for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, just
anyway, that was a very long answer to a very short question. Sorry.
No, it was a great insight. What astounds me is when you treat that many people, you definitely distill a lot of knowledge through that experience, right? What is it like for someone like you that have seen 50,000 people and implemented again your matrix, as you call it, into the one-on-one sessions? What have you? I mean, I'm sure you've learned a lot from working with all those people, but what do you take away from working with that many people?
Well, first of all, I didn't work with 50,000 people. I did 50,000 one-on-ones. So okay. I did 50,000 with one person. Well,
you still can learn a lot. One person is like an ocean.
We know that. Yeah, no. Well, I think there were kind of 3 things really. Is the first one is about kind of holistic prevention, and if I'm really honest with myself as to how I was and how I don't know the shiatsu world as well, but I know that I wasn't doing prevention at the level of prevention that I can do now. And what I mean by that is looking at the kind of social structures and change in societies and dynamics within families and dynamics within us that leads to the stagnation of chi or disharmony, or and I would be trying to do prevention like around diet and exercise and this and breathing and, you know, the stuff that we do. And it was useful and good, but I think there's something I'm trying to do more, say, okay, well, what's the bigger patterns that are leading us to be in jobs that we don't, some of us to be in jobs that we don't like, or society, or the inequality that's kind of going on. So there is something about trying to, so the first thing is that I recognize that prevention is at many, many levels, and we all have different kind of different roles. The second one I kind of really kind of recognized was the, and this is not unique to me, I think when we get very experienced, we get to actually just be simpler at what we do. When we start out, we're seeing all these different things. And then as we get more experience, we go, oh, it's just this one thing that we need to do for this person. And it's that single thing. And I think I got really quite good single things, which is great because acupuncture needles are expensive. And as you see people putting hundreds of needles in, thinking, my God, that must be costing you a fortune. So you can keep it. Yes. But it's more the art. It's more the art. What's the art of, I think I saw, that was the second thing I kind of really recognized, seeing that people. And the third thing was really kind of recognizing how important my state was in terms of my ability to then create change or kind of influence. And I know at certain points, in my desire to help and support as many people as I could, and my inability to say, sorry, that's enough, I got myself very kind of weakened and tired and overwhelmed and thinking I was doing a really, really good job by moving into sacrifice. So I think as I really got really into my practice and better, I got to think, actually, it's about how I am that is as influential. And I know that's kind of really obvious to very people who experience, but when you're too busy to even think about it, because you're too busy trying to help everybody, you forget that your state is important. And I kept forgetting that one. I kept forgetting that one.
Those are really powerful takeaways, and especially this last one. We can all relate to that, I'm sure. Yeah. And also knowing that you're a dominant fire element, I can see, you know, as a fire element, we can do that easily. Shine so bright, and then burn out sometimes, right? Yeah. So can you speak into the year of the tiger? I mean, it's been quite an intense period for all of us all over the world, in our little communities and globally. And we just entered a really powerful year, and it started with a bang, literally, you know, war in Ukraine. So can you speak into that and maybe bring into focus what's our role as therapists, as shiatsu therapists? What's our role this year, moving forward?
So I think in order to kind of really understand this year, you have to kind of go really up high and understand the context in which this year is sitting. So just kind of before we do that, just kind of looking at just the kind of building blocks to understand the energy of a year. So a year, or the time that we existed, has layers to it. So you have, each year obviously has an animal associated with it, and that animal brings certain characteristics. Then it has an element, an energy associated with it, and that brings certain characteristics. But then what you are is you're also in a block of 12 years, and the block of 12 years has a certain theme to it. So currently we're in a block of time started in 2020, kind of dominated by kind of the metal element, metal energy. So it starts with 2 metal energy years, which is like the opening questions, the examination, the exploration, and it ends with 2 metal energy years, which is saying, okay, well, let's explore and let's look at it. So we've got the animal, we've got the element, we've got the block of 12 years. And then what we have at the same time is we have these very slow moving cycles that are taking hundreds and hundreds of years to kind of move through, in areas like kind of geopolitics or consumerism or spirituality. They're also moving through the elements as well. So currently we're in a fire energy stage, the end of a fire energy stage of geopolitics, which has taken hundreds of years to get to this stage. So our fire element geopolitics is based around, hey, do you love me? If you love me, vote for me and I'll be in power. Thanks very much. And let me just promise you this stuff, and let it be very short-lived, and let it be in this moment, and let it just be about populism, which kind of worked for a bit until you get our technology moves through energies as well. And we moved into a kind of the social media style of technology. So you then put this fire energy technology with fire energy kind of geopolitics, and you end up with breaking fire energy geopolitics, because you end up with populism that is changed in an instant and is influenced by so energetically with social media, the medium is the message. So you end up with Twitter having the medium of short black and white thinking. It then changes the geopolitics of that fire. So fire energy geopolitics is trying to move into earth energy, earth element geopolitics, which is about collectivism and joint decisions and stuff. And it's having a real battle. Now, that's not saying, oh, we're not moving into socialism. We're moving into a new version of geopolitics. So that's trying to happen. We've got consumerism is trying to happen and move into a different energy. We've got spirituality is trying to evolve. And each of these is trying to do it at the same time. And I kind of looked back 3,000, I can't see a time where we've had each of those areas trying to move into a different element at exactly the same time.
Wow.
So, and the reason I'm saying this is we've got very big societal and cultural energetic shifts happening at this particular moment in time now. And that's what that's kind of one of the big contexts that we're trying to deal with. So we then, the previous 12 years was dominated by kind of the earth element. So that was about understanding a community. So we had the rise of online education, we had the rise of social media and groups and societies and people coming together and thing. We also went quite tribal in it, which was always the danger. So in 2012, I was saying, we just have to watch we don't go tribal. And we kind of went tribal in many areas, and might be very good tribes, but there were also tribes that were not quite so good that then also went into the fire energy geopolitics and populism and separation and stuff. So we come out of this earth energy bit of tribalism within these big shifts that are trying to happen, and we come bang into a metal wrapped year. Okay, so we move into 2020, we move into a metal rat year. We move from an earth pig year, which is the slowest year in the 60-year cycle, into a metal rat, which is the fastest year in the cycle. So we had a sudden, and we were going, wow, what happened? So we'd slowed right down into this earth pig. We'd slowed right down. Oh, I know how the world works. It's like this. When we were really kind of plotted, and suddenly, kabam, we hit a metal rat year, fastest year ever. And we see that combination of those elements. So what we know about metal energy is we know it's related to the lungs. We know it's about isolation. We know it's about disconnection. We know it's about loss. We know it's about perfectionism. We know that it's about that kind of loneliness or connection. We know it's about that. So we suddenly go from this earth energy experience of all of us together, a bit tribal, but it's quite slow, pigs, all quite nice, to a sudden separation, isolation, bam, bam, and it happens very, very fast. So we don't have chance to catch our breath. And in 2019, I was saying we were going to have something very quick, and so let's do lots of grounding, let's do lots of preparation, let's do lots of stuff ready for it, and bang, it arrives and catches off our guard. We were fortunate that we had the rat, because rats by their nature are very resourceful and innovative. They get up and over and round and through and scurry. I mean, they can do a hoarding, and for some reason, hey, metal element related to large intestine, we started hoarding toilet paper. What are the chances? What are the chances we started hoarding toilet paper? Yeah. And so someone said to me, Nick, why have you got so much toilet paper? I said, well, I literally had boxes of it. Not that I was hoarding, but beforehand, I had a bit of me that was thinking, oh, large intestine. I also had lots of tissues and other things and salt flags and stuff. But anyway, we did the rat hoarding stuff. But we had the innovation, and we had the scurrying, the adaptability, the getting through and all that stuff. And rats, if you've ever had a rat, they're incredibly kind creatures. So we had this real kind of kindness and support and stuff, and that kind of softened it, and people started helping each other and stuff like that. The other thing that we know about metal element is about simplicity of less is more and simple stuff. Let's have simplicity and elegance, and less is more, etc. And one version of keeping things simple is going black and white. That's simple. Black, white, good, nice and simple. So we had our black and whiteness started bouncing into our tribal stuff that we started having building up in that earth energy block of time. We've got a bit tribal, and the tribal stuff went a bit black and white, of you're this and you're that, you're a Trump, you're not Trump, you're pro, you're not pro, you're this, you're pro-vax, you're anti-vax, you're this, you're that, you're that. We went totally black and white. And we had then the rat. When a rat gets under stress and it gets pushed into a corner, it turns quite vicious. So we saw by the end of 2020, black and white thinking, rats backed into a corner, and a viciousness kind of came out. And at the same time, we saw kindness and people coming together, and adaptability and things, and people doing things, and people like yourself with the kind of fire, earth, and wood energy and water combination together, of saying, well, how can we stay connected? Oh, I know what I'll do. I'll start a group and we'll do this. And I started, there was a wonderful things that came out at that time, but it was a shock. We then move into the kind of metal ox year, same metal energy, black and white thinking, blah, 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 except we then end up with the ox, and the ox, instead of being innovative, it just becomes plodding and traditional. So we then have a big pushback from tradition. People say, oh, we need to go back to our traditions. And we have a wood dragon year appearing in 2024. And that is a year, and I know I'm jumping around a bit, but this context really matters for the question you asked.
Sure.
The wood dragon year, dragons are all the creatures are very down to earth, like rats and pigs and rabbits and stuff. And then you've got one outlier, and that's a dragon. And what dragons do is they carry messages from heaven to earth. That's their job. So the last time we had a dragon year was 2012. It was a water dragon. So water is about purpose and meaning and stuff like that. And it was carrying messages from heaven in 2012 about our bigger purpose and our meaning, and the change of bit. That was when we saw a big change in what we were really meant to be about. That kind of started the clock ticking for these society changes. But we've got a wood dragon year coming. So it will carry messages from heaven about the wood element, wood energy, and wood is about innovation, about justice, it's about doing things differently. It's a new, fresh spring time, whatever. So last time we had a wood dragon year was 1964. So we ended up with the Civil Rights Act.
That's right. Yeah.
Innovation, trade, dealing with wood energy wood element is about injustice, fairness, innovation, doing things differently. So we've got that coming. And that energy was coming when we then move into a metal ox year, 2021, and the ox is saying, no, let's have tradition. The very powerful wood stuff is coming through saying, no, let's have change. And you end up with this clash of black and white society, this and that, and we all get very uppity and get very stressed about it all. And we don't have any resourcefulness from the rat anymore. We've just got
yes, yes,
body.
yes.
I mean, one of the things that I do each year, I give the energy waves for the year and say, okay, here are your guiding principles. So the guiding principles for those 2 years were just watch your black and white thinking. The ox was just plow the ground in preparation for what is to come, keep rhythm, develop your own traditions that are going to help your health, because etc. So that's the kind of context where we're in. We're in this kind of traumatized this and that state, but yet with wonderful things that have come out of it, because metal as an element is working out, isn't it, what you value, what's important to you, and what you're going to let go of. So
Yes.
we did an awful lot of letting go in 2020 and 2020. We were throwing things out, we were clearing things, we were letting go of belief systems, we were letting go of things that were holding us back in order to then do the stuff that we're here to do. And so we then move into 2022, a water tiger year, within the context of everything I've talked about. So the water as an element, what we know about that is it's related to winter. It's about consequences, and consequences can be good or bad, but it's about consequences. So we're going to see consequences of what's happened in the past and what our actions are now. And the consequences, because water is the most powerful element. You think a wave, there's nothing that can stop a really powerful wave. It's the most powerful force. And okay, if it's not a wave and it's a trickle, it gets under, over, round and through, whatever. I mean, try and stop water somehow. It is a force that is unstoppable through its adaptability, its flow, its movement, its power, whatever. So we've got the most powerful element this year. And then the tiger is the most powerful animal out of the 12. It has a sovereignty to it, it has a power to it, it has a ability, a desire, it has an authority to it, it has it's brave, it's confident, it has it's out of all the animals, it's the most sovereign. So it's something about sovereignness. It also kind of loves a challenge. So it's got this sovereign, so it is in fact the most powerful animal out of the 12. So we've got the most powerful element and the most powerful animal that come together once every 60 years.
Wow.
This year.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is the other things that we know about water that's mixing with this very powerful sovereign thing? So we know that water is the only element that actually leaves its mark on the earth. If you think about the Grand Canyons and the glaciers and the valleys and the valleys that are carved by the glaciers as they move through, everything that we see that is created, that is visible and stands way beyond the test of time, it just stays on the earth, is actually created by water. So we're in a year where what we do will move through time in a way that no other element does, and you've got the most powerful sovereign animal with it to do it. So the last time we were in a water tiger year was 1962. So 1962, we had the Cuban Missile Crisis. That's right. Where we had Russia saying we want to put nuclear weapons in Cuba. The Americans said, no, we don't. We said, oh, should we have a nuclear war or not? Was the basic premise. Should we go to war over this? And through the leadership in both countries, there was a decision made that actually this wasn't the way that society in the world would go or end. And we moved into a phase of Cold War, different this and that, spies and stuff like that. But it set the scene. We also had in 1962, Kennedy was saying, let's look at what would be the most successful way or measurement of a successful world, and how can we make the world successful? And it was countries came together and they decided that what we would do is we would have economic growth as the marker of success for a country. So it's GDP, it's economic growth, would tell you whether a country was doing well or not. And GDP, economic growth, would be driven by consumerism.
Yes.
So that was set up 60 years ago, and we are now arrived now with this whole thing and say, we have to ask, so how's that working out for us?
It's not.
As a concept.
Yes, it's not.
So what we're doing in this year is we're revisiting what do we want to happen with world peace, politics, and dynamics. What do we want to happen with injustice and human rights? What do we want to happen with civil rights? What do we want to happen with economics? What do we want to happen with so and so? So what we're doing in this year, this phase that we're in, having hopefully let go of lots of stuff, is we're looking at what it is that we want the world to be on a collective, outside, externally, but also looking at what we want our world to be. How do I want to live my life? And we've been given 2 years to say, did you like this or didn't you like it? Did you like more quiet time or didn't you like it? Did you like to have less things or did you want to have more things? Did you enjoy having less social life or do you want more social life? Did you enjoy having... So it was just, we were constantly giving contrasting experience is in order to say, I like this and I didn't like this, then to say, yeah, this is what I would like the world to be. How was it as an experience having division at the level we had it? Do you want that? Because this year is all about a fundamental year about choices, where we start to make choices about how we are ourselves and how we are a society that will then travel through time. And obviously it doesn't happen now. That's just like the first trickle when it starts to build the Grand Canyon. It doesn't make the Grand Canyon in a trickle, but the trickle starts somewhere. And we happen to have been born through, I believe, through choice or whatever, in this particular time where we are seeing geopolitics, consumerism, spirituality, all trying to change energy at the same time. First, never seen it before. We've got this deciding for the next 60 years how it will be. So we're deciding kind of certainly beyond my lifetime. We are the equivalent of the children of the 60s, deciding how we want things to be for the next 60 years. So we are all collectively going through that. And at the same time, some people are just trying to survive, because that's what we're also trying to do on some level, depending upon how fortunate you are. And some people say, I can't think about this big stuff. I'm just about how to survive. And that's fine, because what you're meant to be doing is looking at what matters to me. Do I want to have a close family or an arguing family? Do I want to have love? Do I want to have separation? Do I want to have whatever it is? So that's the context, kind of what's going on, which was a very, very long answer to a very short question again. However, I haven't actually answered your question. What can shiatsu practitioners or shiatsu society do? Which was actually your question.
but it ties to, thank you, by the way, for beautifully building such a visual for all of us. And putting the years together as you did, because it all made sense for me anyways, I'm sure for the audience too. But I couldn't resist to also visualize and think, well, it seems like something is ready to implode. I mean, talking about the element of water and as you said, the divisiveness and taking camps and survival, and it seems like in order for that change to transition into, something needs to give, something needs to implode. I mean, that's the sense that I got out of it.
Well, you can look at it. You can look at it in different ways. I think there's a multitude. You could say something needs to be washed away. You could say we need to create some space. So we've had 2 years of creating space, of creating an opening, of letting go of certain things. So there certainly is space that we've been asked to create some space. And it's tough because many people don't want to let go of what they perceive. And then we have this kind of black and white thinking that's developed, this polarized view that is realistically starting to dissolve. So one of the things water does is it dissolves things, doesn't it? So we are starting to see a beginning of a dissolving of the black and white thinking. But just like in the 1960s, you had very polarized black and white thinking. You come out of 2 world wars, and then you were moving into the 1960s with a fresh new way. Hey, even if you're looking at sex, you say, well, how can you have sex when you're not married? It became very polarized. Or even if you're looking at the like we've had our grief and loss experience. What they did in the 60s was they started to try and let go of the grief from 2 world wars. So in the late 50s, they were still totally defined by the grief from the First World War, which was tremendous, Second World War, which was tremendous, and they were stuck in a state of grief. And part of society tried to move forward away from that grief and say, let's go to the moon, let's do these new things, let's have peace and love, let's build a bright new world. And there were a group of people that said, how can you think like that? Don't you know all these people that died in the war for you? How can you just not be, how can you lose respect and walk around with your long hair and your smoking your sweet Mary Jane and on your scooter?
Yes.
How can you do that? And when you're so disrespectful. So there was but there was eventually a kind of resolution as to where people kind of, they softened, and then they started to kind of soften. 62, you had 61, 62, you had lots of the race riots and but there was a gradual softening, and it was softened by people like Dr. Martin Luther King that did a wood energy, I have a dream. I have a new future, a new way of being, and was allowed to kind of carry people forward. So I think as practitioners, therapists, whatever, whether we're parents or whether or not we're friends or whatever, I think we all need to try and be doing the same thing. And I think the advantage for shiatsu practitioners is they have phenomenal tools in order to do the things that we need to do, whereas other people perhaps don't have the tools. So I think there are kind of 3 main things that we're looking to do. Is the first one is, as a result of all this stuff that's building up, we have lots and lots of stagnation of chi. So people are in pain, they're stuck, they're inflexible, they're irritable, they're depressed, they're grief-stricken, their chi is stuck, and there is within that stuckness, it has a kind of a metal element stuckness to it, because lots of it was formed over those 2 years. Mm-hmm. So you then come along with the kind of brilliance of shiatsu, which has the ability to move chi through movement and through touch, which is that kind of counter to what we experienced in those 2 years of no touch. For many of us, because I lost my spleen, my immune system is virtually nothing. My wife was working in intensive care, so she was constantly, so we lived in different parts of the house.
Wow.
And for a year, just
That's
over
incredible.
a year.
Yeah. Wow.
And I had not one single human being touched my thing for a year.
That's incredible. Yeah.
And that is a very weird experience. The first time anyone touched me was the hairdresser. And I don't have a lot of, I have slightly more hair than you, but I don't have a lot of hair. But I said, oh, could you just do a little bit here and just a little bit here, a little bit. I'm thinking, oh, this is so nice. Nothing human being. So I think joking about it. So I think one of the things that that shiatsu, it brings that touch, the touch to move the chi, to create that flexibility. And it's an invaluable skill anyway, an invaluable gift anyway, but where in this 60-year cycle is it more important than this year?
Yes.
I can't see a year that is, I can't see, because no year other than this one have we had the years before it.
Yes.
So the first thing.
Totally agree. Yeah. Totally agree. I mean, I since the pandemic, I felt like people needed me more than ever, you know. And that has been the case, like as you know, starving to be touched, and having to handle this period, you know, and everything that comes with it from all angles, you know, because it really affected every area of our lives, right?
Yeah.
And then the constant barrage of you know, death looming over your head, you know.
Yeah.
That's a very difficult period, and yeah, people need us more than ever, and we are, as a therapy, so suited for this times, you know, and this transition, you know.
Yeah, I don't know a therapy that's better suited, really. I really don't. And I'll go a little later into why. I'll elaborate on that. So I think there is the kind of the moving of the chi, the flow, the touch, and the kind of recognition that that's how we kind of operate. There is also the at times of change where everything is kind of up and down and people are kind of destabilized. As practitioners, we might struggle always in our own lives, but as practitioners, when we are at our very best, we are reassuring, stabilizing, and consistent in how we are, in the very nature of how we get into positions of working with people. We're stabilizing ourselves through our positions and our stance and our movement. And that very act of stabilizing and being that consistency gives a reassurance that allows people to change, allows them to let go, allows them to kind of soften, to let go and things. So I think that that reassurance that we can give, and again, I think shiatsu, because it has the positional stuff that creates that steady positional, is very different from, I've been working with other practitioners who don't have that within their practice, and they're very unstable at the moment, and they're having all this unstable thinking and all this unstable thoughts that is transmitting to the people that they're working with, and they're just making them more unstable.
Yes.
So it's kind of how is your therapy in its nature? Is it grounding and reassuring and creating the ability to stabilize people, to stabilize them in order for them to be able to move forward or calm or whatever. And then the third one, I think it's where shiatsu, I think, really kind of comes in. It's related to the first one. It's the ability to, again, kind of hold that change. So it's that kind of movement of you're allowing things to change, but you're holding the change.
That's right.
As the change is happening.
Yes.
And that's kind of what we try and do at the Five Institute. We're kind of are holding the change. We're doing similar things. We're doing stuff to kind of move chi, to reassure, but it is that holding of the change as it's doing. But because of the physicality of shiatsu, to allow that holding of change, again, it makes it invaluable. And I don't know a better therapy that you put together the movement of chi, the grounding, and the holding of change, which is kind of what we are ultimately being asked to do at this particular stage, to change, to ground, to hold, to create some space where people can then make decisions that are based on a still, wise place, as opposed to a reactive, distressed place, where we're seeing many, many decisions are coming from a reactive, distressed space.
Yes. Yes. Beautifully said. I mean, and as a therapy, as shiatsu therapy, moving ahead into this year as a whole, as a global community, can you share some insights into that?
Yeah, I mean, I think just kind of backtracking. I mean, I think there are some therapies like kind of qigong and stuff will do that, the breath work, and lots of those will do it. But it is the holding, the physicality that's different. So I just don't want people to listen to think, well, qigong does this and breathing does this and that. I absolutely 100% agree.
Yes.
I no longer have a cat, so I can say this quite comfortably. There are many ways to skin it. There are many ways to skin a cat. Before, when I would say that, the cat would usually walk out the door. But I don't have one, so I don't need to worry about it. So there are many ways to do things, but I think shiatsu has an advantage in that all of them happen with ease and in the best combination with other therapies. Yeah, there's thing. So shiatsu society as a whole, what you can do is you can look at it as look at it in a number of different ways. But before I do that, I just want to add the final thing that I think the shiatsu practitioner, and I'm saying practitioner because this is an individual choice here as to whether or not we do that. Sure. Whether or not we do this. I think because we're working with the elements and we're working with energy and we understand it, and because we're in an energetic shift and an elemental shift, whatever, it doesn't take much for us to get an energetic understanding of what's going on that allows others to make sense of what's going on. So it's why I think I did something like 40 webinars and appearances talking about the year of the water tiger. I just did one on Tuesday. They had 1,200 people booked on it. And the idea is to try and say, okay, this is what's going on. So that's why I'm putting out the content, so people have that framework to understand that it is complex, there is a lot going on, but it is understandable and it's fine. It's just a little bit, and we chose to be born here. And we don't all, like I say, we don't all have to do the big political big stuff. We might just heal our family or learn to love ourselves or whatever it might be. But what I think, and again, this is an individual choice for shiatsu practitioners, I think they have an inherent already all the first steps, all the steps in order to understand the energetic complexity of what's going on and to help guide people through the energetic complexity of what's going on, of recognizing that our politics is changing into an energy and this and that, which is why the 5 energy, we're doing so much just free sharing about it in order for people to go, okay, it's fine. We know what it is that we're meant to do. So I think individually practitioners can kind of, shiatsu practitioners can tap into that wisdom and talk about it from an energetic sense. But that is an individual thing we need to do. Like I say, we've got this content, lots of content that we're sharing to help give you the language and the understanding. So we have each month, I look at the energy waves of that month and say, okay, what's the energy waves of this month? What is it that we're going to be looking and addressing? And then you can build it into your practice. And that's what I would do constantly with my practice. Okay, this is the energy of this month, so this is how I'm going to work on it. And people live on Zoom, we have Kindy. Kindy would already know the energy of the month, and she would come in and say, oh, we've got the energy of this month, blah, 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 blah. So you inherently know it, but it's sometimes using it in a way that is a little bit more outward to guide people, because it is a complicated time. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. But it is an individual choice. So collectively, the kind of shiatsu world, I think one of its big roles is to be an example of what the future looks like. Okay, because like I say, we're moving out of these phases of spirituality and consumerism, geopolitics. So what does society look like? What does it look like? How would it be as an example? And I think the shiatsu world can just say, hey, look at this as an existence, as a possibility. So our consumerism is moving in from an earth energy to metal. So it's about less is more. So what's the example that we can show that we have happiness and existing with less is more? But what we do have is so beautiful and so elegant and so precious. We only would want one thing. So I don't want to have 70 crappy t-shirts. I would just like to have one really nice one. And there is, because there is that kind of Oriental Japanese input, that there is a minimalism within shiatsu that is inbred, that attracts people that understand that. So there's layers within the community. I'm not wanting to put everyone in a box, so you're all like this, because you're not. You're all very, very individual, but there is an energy that has attracted you to it.
Absolutely.
That matches the consumerism movement of where we're trying to go to. It matches the spirituality movement of where we're trying to go to, and the holistic wholeness of existence and integration. It matches the geopolitical place that we're trying to move to. So it isn't much for this as a society to be an example of this is what it could look like.
Beautiful.
Okay, you've got to deal with your black and whiteness, because you're a society, you're a group full of human beings that have been influenced by the energy waves that lead us to have black and white thinking. Are we pro-vax or are we anti-vax? Are we this? Are we that? Are we this or with that? And the camps that divide, how do they get to be resolved within the whole, in the same way that we have to resolve the camps within the whole to coexist within thing without all becoming the same? So again, there's an exploration you have to do, but you have the tools to do it. And I would be looking at holding that change, doing the things that you do in your therapy, doing that within your community. But for me, it's always been with the shiatsu world to be an example of what it would look like,
Wow, that's very inspiring, and I'm sure it resonates with all of us here. And this is really why we created this platform, is you know, to step into it. As Kindy said in the past, what's the new paradigm? This is the new paradigm. So thank you for giving us those insights and your wisdom and your experiences. I want to give the audience time to ask or comment questions from our guest. And maybe Kindy, since you introduced me to Nick, I'm going to shine a light on you to comment, add, whatever you would like.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Nick.
Oh, my pleasure.
I've known Nick for many, many years. We live in the same city together, and I've known him since he ran the centre here in Nottingham, the Integrated Health Centre. And you know, originally I went to him for acupuncture, and what really struck me was that he was no ordinary acupuncturist. So the conversations we would have weren't just around my health, they were around what was going on in the world, what was going on in my family, what was going on in my business, and how it was all related and absolutely fascinating. So it's no surprise that, you know, Nick ended up going down this road at all. And you know what you were saying about, so last year I came on, I was talking about what's the role of shiatsu in the new paradigm, and that's stayed with me. And I know shiatsu has a really important role, but you've really kind of pulled together some of those elements and brought some clarity to it. And I mean, you know me, I like clarity, you know, that mixture of my wood and my metal, you know, that simplicity and that creativity. So you've really helped to pull some of that together. And Mikhail and I have been speaking about this as well. So thank you. And it's a joy to have you in my community.
Oh, it's lovely to be here. Lovely to be here. You were one of the very memorable people I worked with, that when I said I was going to stop my practice, you said, "Oh, congratulations, well done."
Yeah.
Most people were very cross with me.
Yes, I remember. Yeah. You had a bigger vision and a bigger purpose.
Yeah.
I
do remember my very last day. I had a patient of 101, someone of 96, and someone of 92, and they all said to me, "Well, I always thought that you would carry on and it would be, you know, to the end." And I said, "Well, I didn't think." I said, "I didn't think you were going to live this long." And they said, "They said neither did we." So it was amusing in the end. I do. That's a joke. But it was. They are no longer with us now. But I do remember that quite distinctly, thinking, "Wow, I've been doing this for a long time now." But you were very encouraging. You said, "Yeah, no, go for it.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kindy. Anyone else here or on our group might have any comments, questions? Just raise your hand. Can you talk to us about a couple of your books, Nicholas? Oh, wait, we have a question from Sepien. Sepien Healing, go ahead, unmute yourself.
Oh, Mihail, thank you. It's Alexis, and I know I haven't got a picture up there.
That's fine. We can hear you.
It's a new commitment. It's a new computer and a new year, and thank you. I'm glad you've got started again. And I have just a comment to Nick and maybe a question to follow about, I lost my spleen as well 50 years ago. And I know it has a lot to do with transformation of energy. And I must say, I appreciate your guidance and insights, because how to navigate, you know, and chart a new course is sometimes very challenging, especially through the pandemic. And I've had a knee replacement recently, so really all of this has brought me to my knees, literally. And but I'm just so happy that Mihail is hosting again, and Nicholas, I think we have a bit of a parallel, and I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your knowledge and experience. And I just wonder if you had any tips about, you know, how to move forward without a spleen. I think I'm doing very well. I'm 68 and I'm here, and you look fantastic. So you must be doing the right things too. So
yeah, I do actually. So one of the things that the spleen is very kind of it depends how did you lose your spleen?
Oh, it was a car accident.
Perfect. So when we not perfect for you at the time, because I know it was pretty life-threatening, but perfect now. So when our spleen ruptures and they have to operate it, what happens is you end up with cells being splattered around the inside of you. And it's a little bit like endometriosis, where you end up with spleen cells dotted around your abdomen, just the same as you can do with endometrial cells with endometriosis. So one of the things that I've been kind of very clear about is that those cells continue to grow and they continue to have action, they continue to perform a function. They might not all be in one place, but they're still performing a function. So one of my things was how can I get them to be more in one place? So what I did was I started taking, there are different companies that produce it, but when I originally started taking it, it was laminine, which was a stem cell derivative from eggs. And I took that because what used to happen when I had an infection, I would feel my whole abdomen buzzing and tingling. I would feel these obviously the little cells were growing and twitching and expanding and trying to do what the spleen cells try to do, which is produce antibodies and etc. So when I started taking the laminine, what happened is I got a disappearance of all the things around, and I started to feel it where my spleen was originally. And my intention is, over time, is to just gradually grow back enough of a spleen. So I think the spleen has that ability to grow back. And if you had lost yours with a car accident, I suspect that some of it, and you're looking after yourself, I suspect some of it is there and growing back. But I found laminin really good at bringing it back to the place where it was meant to be, because that's what stem cells do. So much so that I was told, you probably were, that I had to shield with it. But when I had antibody tests to see my status with COVID, they said, and this was before the vaccination, they said, you've actually already had COVID. And then the doctors looked back at my notes and they said, okay, in January, you came to us and you had a horrible chest. You couldn't get it to clear. We gave antibiotics. It didn't make any difference. We gave you a chest x-ray. And so I had it. So obviously my spleen was doing a good enough job to deal with it. So yeah, I would just look at growing it back again, which you probably have already, to be honest.
I think that may have a little, I'm happy to hear that, yeah, you're feeling energetically and that you have spleen and it's working for you. How do you spell laminine?
It's L-I-M-I-N-E, L-A-M-I-N-E. I think that's right.
Okay, I'll look into it, but I appreciate that. And I do know the people who have sometimes grow little baby livers, you know, in their abdomen too. So that's possible with the spleen as well.
Yeah.
To get it to function as a whole piece would be.
Yeah. And remember, we are in the most powerful year for creation and making things change and happen and do things. So, you know, this is a great year to grow your spleen back, or to start that off. But obviously you've got enough of there to be doing well.
I'll keep building. Thank you very much.
Yes, that's all right. Thank you, Alex.
Can I grow another one of myself? Is that possible this year?
No, you can only have one. There's a limit. Less is more. Less is more.
Okay, we have another question from Elaine Lifty. Hi, Elaine. How do you see Shiatsu interacting with Orthodox medicine and the establishment this year?
Okay, that's what part of the world are you in? I think that depends.
What parts is Elaine from, or me?
Yeah.
Actually,
yeah, Elaine.
From the UK.
Okay. Okay. Because the answer to that question depends upon the context of what's happening within the health service. So within any relationship, there are two people on both sides of the relationship. We happen in the UK to have a strategy to dismantle the NHS, to decide that it's not fit for purpose by breaking it. So currently they're in the process of breaking the NHS, and then they can turn around and they can say it's broken. So therefore we need to change the model and we need to have it as private with healthcare insurance, etc. And it's been a general principle for the last 21 years. They've been working towards that thing. So currently, the NHS orthodox medicine in the UK has no space or capacity to deal with anything other than its current crisis. So just think of it like someone who is in such a place of crisis, and you say, hey, should we have a dinner party to get together? And they just have no space to be able to think about that. As kind of Kindy knows, kind of 25 years ago, I was doing lots of integration with the NHS, and they had space and they had capacity. They introduced acupuncturists into most hospitals. They were having homeopathic clinics. We set up an integrated health clinic. There was lots of space to see a very good, healthy relationship forming. However, the NHS has no capacity and space to have an in-depth relationship because it is in crisis and survival. So in the UK, I don't see that as a integration. However, as practitioners who are the other side of the relationship, what we can do is we can hold the space for that relationship that's harmonious, and the space for the practitioners and support the health workers, etc. But I don't see this as a time of earth energy. There's 12-year block of time. Earth energy is about assimilation. Metal energy block of time is about it's autumn, it's fall, it's disconnection, it's got a different energy. So if we can create a revolutionary new approach to it, then there is hope. But if we're looking at a gradual, gentle, soft assimilation, let's get together and let's hug out and hang out together, that time is gone because of the state and the crisis the NHS is in. As a collective, are there individuals within the NHS that will be cool and work with it and know that we need to do it? 100%. There are individuals that know that the salvation for health in the UK is to have integrated holistic health, where we talk about having a healthcare crisis here. We don't have a healthcare crisis in the UK. We have a self-care crisis in the UK, and we have a self-care crisis across the world. And we, as practitioners, we are really good at self-care. So I think there is hope, but it's going to have to be quite a revolutionary approach. And my personal view is, at the point at which the collapse is happening, and the government and the multinationals and the drug companies will want to go to an insurance-based model, at that point of it being broken, and they go, hey, let's do this, that's when we as a collective step in and say, no, why don't we do this? And we move into a self-care, holistic practice, and we save the NHS. So that's my view. And actually, I think that's something that happens across the world. We need to across the world. But I don't know, Kindy, if you agree with that analysis.
So it's a great message, because here in Canada, particularly in this province, I can speak for. Yeah, there's been so much pressure on the different colleges, associations that I'm privy to, because I have colleagues as presidents in some of them, and they said they've lost 5 years of their lives because of the last 2 years. But there's definitely a push in a way to monopolize, all these colleges by the government, but I can see where, being me, I can see the need for all those colleges to get together and push back and propose a different scenario, as you said, right?
Yeah, and our geopolitics is an earth element that we have the energy is moving in the direction that helps us, because our geopolitics, whether it's a geopolitics of professions or whether it's a geopolitics of health, is moving towards an earth energy. Let's find a way to do it. It's just whether or not you can stop the rape and pillaging by the big multinationals that have a vested interest in not having a holistic health service, because you don't make money from a holistic health service. And I'm not conspiracy, I'm just realist that I know
it's a fact.
Yeah.
It's a fact, right? We don't have a health crisis. Like you said, I love that. We have self-care crisis. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. What would you like to add? Maybe pitch a course, a program, or maybe mention your books. They look very interesting. I would love to learn more about them.
They look interesting. They are interesting. Yeah, there's. Let me just.
Especially the good, the bad, and the ugly boxes. I like that principle. I use that a lot in my practice. That metaphor.
Yeah. As Kindy knows, I don't do pitching or have anything prepared. Let me just get the books and I can show you them.
Sure, please. Yes.
Yeah, so the books are interesting because they were written for this time that we're currently in. So the first one I wrote was called The Story of Boxes, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the Story of Boxes I wrote with my good friend, Runa Magnusdottir, and it's based around this idea that we put ourselves and people, we put each other in boxes. You're a this and you're a that. You're a this, and then as soon as we put someone in a box, then we end up with. Let me just do that. I've got a bit of echo coming back here on the.
Oh, we all good on this side.
Okay. Yeah, so this idea that we kind of put each other in boxes, and it's the kind of nature of the kind of black and white thinking of you're a Democrat, you're a Republican, you're a chiropractor, you're a shiatsu practitioner, you're a man, you're a woman, you're a this, you're a that, you're pro-vax, you're anti-vax, you're this, you're that. So we put each other in boxes, and boxes, what they do is they create isolation, they create separation, and then they also create power hierarchies that kind of go along. So if you look at slavery, that was a box-based decision. These people are this color, therefore they can be slaves. If you look at the Holocaust, that was the same thing. So what we did was we wrote the book to explore boxes, and we called them the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because you have good boxes, like the Shiatsu Society comes together as a group, you're in a box together, and it's good. And then you have boxes that aren't quite so good, and then you have boxes that are just really shouldn't exist. So the book is really an exploration as to, and the thing is, the boxes, they're all made up. They don't really exist. They're just human constructs. And we do them because it creates hierarchy. We do them because it helps us make sense of complexity. We do it so we can make someone bad and someone good. We do them for all sorts of reasons. So it makes sense to have boxes. It just doesn't make sense for any of us to live in them. So the book is really exploring that, and it goes through a process about how to get out of it. So that was the first book, and that was written for this black and white time where we need to heal. And we wrote that in 2019 in preparation for this. And then that same year, I wrote The Art of Kind and Flowing Relationships. And it's looking at the energetic states of relationships and what is the art of having a kind and flowing relationships? How can you deal with your differences? How can you make relationships that last? How can you adapt and flow? And it was based around my 35 years in practice of looking at what happens within relationships. And again, that book is written for now of the art of kind and flowing relationships. How can you create understanding between each other and create happy relationships that last by looking at to deal with our differences, but maintain our differences. So they're two books that are both the same coin, but they're both sides of the same coin. So they're there. So I think they've been written for this time. So they're there. The other thing I think is really good that we're doing at the moment is we have a 5-day mindset makeover, and it's designed as being quite a kind of short, tight, and it takes kind of the best of my thinking and 35 years, 50,000 consultations experience about how do we have a mindset. So it's about controlling unwanted thoughts, dealing with things. And I think many of us have been deeply traumatized by this experience, or we're in the process of going for an upgrade. Might be the same thing. We're going for an upgrade. And the 5-day mindset makeover is designed for that upgrade, or designed to heal, or designed to do anything along those lines. And I think that's a really good one to do. And one of the reasons I think it's so, like everything we do at the 5 Institute, we either do it free, or we have what's known as kind pricing. So it's kind to you, which is like virtually our lowest price, kind to us when we make a bit of money, or kindness together when you pay a little bit and then we do something special with it. So we always have kind pricing of low, medium thing, and you get the same product, exactly the same, you just have kind pricing. And then we have, for the mindset makeover, we have completely free if you want to. If you need it or someone else needs it, then you just go on it for free. Or if you can afford the low one, which is, I think it's $22 US. If you can afford that, that's great. If you can afford 30, that's great, because then we can get to do a bit more and survive. But if you can't, then it's completely free. And so if you've got patients or people you're working with and you want them to have a really kind, loving experience within something like that, and it's fun, it doesn't take up much time, then I'd recommend that. And I think that is a foundation bit of work that really gets you to understand what we're doing at the 5 Institute, feeds into something else. And it's been designed for this time. So I think those are the 3 things that I would recommend people do. Either come on the mindset makeover yourself, or you say to clients, look, if they're really struggling with unwanted thoughts, or they're depressed or low, or they beat themselves up, or they do anything like that, just say, look, here's an option for you. Completely free if they need it, low cost if they can afford it.
Beautiful. Very generous. Very generous, and I'm sure many will take you up on it. Again, thank you for your generosity, your wisdom, everything that you shared with us today. I feel almost relieved hearing everything that I heard today.
Good, you should do.
I feel like my mental element just settled down.
Yeah.
And I feel that you painted a beautiful picture that is very inspiring also for myself, for my Shiatsu brothers and sisters and our Shiatsu community. And yeah, I invite all of you to step into that beautiful picture and the role that you see us as Shiatsu Therapy in this changing landscape and moving into this new paradigm. So thank you for all of that.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Well, thank you for having me as a guest. It's been an absolute joy, And I agree, it is a magnificent time. So I think it's the most powerful year in the 60-year cycle. We've chosen to be born into this time. We will create the future. We are the children of the 60s, but yet we have an evolution. There's no time like this. It's in a way what we've been waiting for in our role as servants. Really.
Beautiful. Thank you, everyone out there on our Facebook group, and thank you all the guests here, and have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week again.
Great, wonderful.
Thank you both. Speak to you soon, Mihail.